Alright. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to I Bought a Microphone, your faithful narrator slash monologuer slash, I don't know, whatever, rambler in the night is here this evening. I got a preamp for my microphone, which I gotta say is pretty sweet. I'm still playing with it. Let me know if the sound quality is any different at all. Remember last time I was complaining about that waveform. I see a lot of different stuff happening today. And of course I've listened to it on lower volumes and it sounds really good. So I hope I finally figured this shit out. Not that I, needed to put all that effort in or whatever, but I really wanted to do it right if I was going to do it. And that's part of the reason I got the microphone, was to learn how to do shit like this. I mean, I could have, gone to school or whatever, but fuck that. It's more fun, at least I mean, it was definitely frustrating not understanding a lot of things up until now, and I've learned so much about how this shit works. It's crazy. So there's a reason that they charge you, to go to school to learn how to do it, because it's not super easy. But fuck yeah, I like it. And like I said, I got a preamp, which is it's this little box, this little USB box that I plug in to my computer and I plug my mic into, and it gives the sound a little boost, a little boosty. And I got the nice microphone, so everything's nice and crisp, and not too overmodulated or anything like that. At least it seems to be, and I hope you notice it. I do these little things just for you. Well, mostly I do them for me, but I also care, about the product that I create and want it to be as good as possible. So, I hope it's noticeable, all the work I've put into it. That's all I'm saying. Well, I don't know. We've already established that I'm never going to do another one-man karaoke because nobody's given me any song suggestions. So, I guess we'll just be done with that project. I'll have to find some other way to vent my singing output. I'll maybe create a separate project and just call it One Man Karaoke, and it'll be separate from my I Bought a Microphone project. We'll see how I decide to go with it. But anyway, I was kind of wondering what I was going to talk about tonight. A lot of shit going on in the world, and not really anything going on with me so far. Been watching SVU. Exciting. Yeah, not really. It's an interesting show. They keep you can see they're playing with it behind the scenes as I'm on, I think, the third season. And it's already changed. Like, the first season, they were all straight, pretty character-driven for a Law and Order show, which I thought was surprising. The second season was a lot like the regular Law and Order season, with the cops in the courtroom. They did all of that shit. But then Ice-T shows up, which makes things interesting. But then, third season, it's picking up a little bit. They're trying to go back a little bit towards the character-driven stuff, which I like. I don't know that I'll watch all 20 seasons. I probably won't. Crime shows I tend to get burned out on. I like silly violence. I like Captain America punching somebody with his shield violence. As I get older, the Seven style women and men gruesomely murdered violence I don't know, I find it less entertaining and more just, you know, disturbing. I guess because more and more the older I get, the more I realize it's not really just TV violence, because that shit, happens all the time, and it's rough. But anyway, consider this my intro done. I had a rant couple of weeks ago, a month or so ago, about Batman and Wolverine, characters that I feel are overused or just, kind of irritating to me. Not that I don't like them, just kind of done, like they figure we just done all we can with these characters. Perhaps it's time for somebody else to step into the limelight. But you're never gonna, break the dark, gritty loner type thing. Which again, fucking Batman is not a loner. But I mean, I mentioned all his little street friends that run around with him, but I didn't mention the fucking Justice League, who he also hangs out with. So there's that. But I was also talking last time about war games, and I totally spaced one of my favorites, which I felt really stupid once I realized it. But by the time I had realized it, the episode had been posted, and it was already kind of too late to run that back in there. But really good war game that I think you should check out if you're, like I said, getting into the war games. And this one is one of the more intermediate ones. It's definitely more complicated than like the Battle Lore stuff I was talking about, but it's not like Paths of Glory quite complicated. It's kind of in the middle there. And it's called Horus Heresy. And I'm sure by now, if you're listening to this, you know that I'm a big nerd. But I'm assuming that most of you know what Warhammer 40,000 is, 40K. For those who don't, a very, very brief synopsis. In the year 40,000, Earth is at the center of a galactic empire. There is the immortal emperor who sits upon the throne, who is a dude who's strapped to a chair and basically kept alive by a bunch of horrible scientific devices, and he's being fed psychics and yeah, they're doing a lot of terrible things to keep him alive. And we have groups of space marines who have gone out into the universe and are conquering and fighting a bunch of different races. There's space elves, and there's space orcs, and there's all sorts of crazy stuff that they have to fight. Before all this happened, the reason the Emperor is strapped in a chair and being kept alive by these horrible devices is that there was a mutiny on the home planet of Terra. And a very powerful member of the army named Horus is corrupted by these beings. We'll call them demons to simplify things. And they corrupt a bunch of people. They're called the Forces of Chaos. And they bring them under their sway, and they try to take over the Imperium of Man. And that is the battle. That is what Horus Heresy is about. It's Horus's battle to try and take over Earth before Earth's reinforcements arrive and destroy Horus, or scatter his minions to the wind, at least. Spoiler alert, Horus gets his butt kicked, but not permanently. The Forces of Chaos shall return. But that's not what Horus Heresy is about. Horus Heresy is about the battle, about Horus's battle to try to destroy the Emperor, and it's about the Emperor trying to survive long enough so that his reinforcements will arrive and save him. It's a very cool game. Also card-driven combat. Not the moves. Well, no, actually the moves, you got 2 decks of cards. That's right. You got 2 decks of cards, ones which are your actions that you move your units around with, and then you've got your combat deck, which you use to do damage, deflect damage, and maybe give some little bonus powers to your units. It's really solid. It's very cool. It's a beautiful game. Like, if you see a picture of it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's got a 3D board. There's parts of the board that actually project upwards. So you have, like, the Palace of the Emperor, for example, is actually a 3D part of the map. It's a piece of plastic that you set in there and rises up above the map, above the playing board. Kind of like Life. Sort of. But way fucking cooler. But that you can picture it if you picture Life. It's like that, sort of. But, you know, it's a fucking palace that's been shot by a bunch of bullets and stuff, so picture that. You know, it's like a fucking war-torn hellscape. But like the game of Life. Life. A war-torn hellscape. Basically the same thing, right? So that's Horus Heresy. So I guess this is my catch-up episode. I don't know. I don't really know. Like, I was talking about Wolverine and Batman because I was going to talk about Captain America a bit. And let's just roll right in there. Captain America. I hear a lot of complaints about him. And some people, you know, don't understand why he's my favorite superhero. And we're going to set aside the movie Captain America for a minute. The MCU Captain America, I guess I should say. And we're going to just focus on a comic book Captain America. And then we'll roll in with the movie Captain America. Because I like them both pretty much for the same reason, but the comic book character gets it a little more on the nose. Let's start with what the whole idea behind him is. And it probably started differently. It's kind of how it's evolved over the years, especially when they brought him back in the 70s? Late 60s, early 70s? I can't remember exactly when. So he was, back in the day, he beat up Hitler and, he took on Tojo and he and his wise cracking buddy Bucky just, beat up Nazis and Japanese people whenever they, came around. The idea was that he wasn't going to work for any specific outfit of the military. This is what I understand of the plot. He wasn't going to work for any specific outfit of the military. He was going to function, since they didn't have an army of super soldiers like they wanted. They only had the one. He was going to function as kind of a figurehead, a banner to rally behind, a symbol of American spirit and superiority. And so he was run around and beat up a bunch of Nazis, and he posed for pictures, and they, put him in newspapers and sent him to the boys in the trenches, and, that was supposed to raise everybody's spirits. And, there's Captain America. He's doing it. He's doing it for the rest of us. We gotta, who are we to do any less than he can, but something like that. So he was he's the ideal. He's the Ubermensch, if you will. The Superman. And if you don't think they made those comparisons to comic books, you don't read comic books. And that's kind of where he ended up in the 70s. Like, he was part of the quote-unquote greatest generation. And, for all the good they did. They did some, pretty terrible things. But I think the ideals, for the most part, that they strived for were something that we could respect. Especially when you're trying to topple, a guy who's trying to take over the world. Certainly nobody can fault them for rising to that occasion, and commendable that they did. But the America of the 70s that Captain America wakes up in, much different than the America of the 40s. There's pollution's on the rise, and economic turmoil, and heroin is coming in real big, super big in New York in the 70s, and yeah, just lots of horrible things. Companies shutting down plants, laying off thousands of people out of work, and of course you got your free lovers who are your fucking hippie generation that fucking takes their love and all their free love and all that shit that they learned in the 60s and in the 70s, they just pissed that all away. And then that brings us into the 80s, where nobody cares about anything. Fucking horrible people. Fuck you, hippies. God damn it. Just stick to your fucking guns, man. Why do you gotta be so See, the problem is you're hippies. You don't want to do anything. Like, oh, free love, man. Let's just, it's all good, buddy. Just chill out and smoke it. No! You gotta fucking do things. You can't just say abolish the government. It doesn't just go away by itself. Hippies. Anyway, so what Captain America becomes is, not only is he a man out of time, which is really cool, but he even says, he sets himself up as this, he is a symbol, not of America and its people, but he's a symbol of what America was founded on, its ideals, what it can be, what it should be, what it should always strive to be. And he's not let's look at the characteristics of him. He's not a pacifist. He's perfectly fine with beating the shit out of people. But he doesn't kill anybody if he can avoid it. I mean, he's killed a couple of times, but not flagrantly. He's honest, hardworking, trustworthy. He wants to help people. He wants to help as many people as possible. Wants to keep the world safe. And he wants to promote his ideals. He wants other people to see him live by these ideals, learn from his example, and become better for it. He doesn't try to force his notions on other people. The only time he gets involved with force, with stopping people, hitting people, is when those people are a threat to other people's freedoms, to other people's pursuit of happiness and whatnot. So it's an interesting spin on him. It's an interesting character, I think. To not only be the representative of a people, to be a living embodiment of an era, and people see you as a symbol, but to set yourself up as that symbol, to take on that mantle, to say, yes, that's what I will do. And people ask him to serve in the military, ask him to run for president, ask him to do all sorts of things. He's like, no, I cannot represent a specific group of people during a specific amount of time. I represent the ideals of America, how great it can be, and if I attach myself to any particular group, any particular time, then I inevitably become tainted by it. Which is, that's pretty savvy, you know? That's pretty forward thinking, pretty, novel thinking for a fucking superhero. You know, he's not just, avenging his parents' death, man. He's fucking. He's representing an entire culture's ideals. That's fucking crazy. And that's, I don't know, that's, to me, that's pretty cool. He's got one of the coolest power sets. For starters, he's not super powered at all. He is, what the Super Soldier Serum did was put him to the zenith of physical strength and agility. So, the strongest person in the world, that's who Captain America is, as strong as that person. The, you know, fastest person in the world, Captain America's fast as that person. The, what's agility? Gymnastics? The best gymnast in the world, Captain America's as good as that person. So he doesn't have super strength, but he's got physical capabilities beyond a normal human being. And then he trained really, really hard, and he is a master of many forms of martial arts and acrobatics. So that's how he's able to, he utilizes that above average ability that he has, the above average strength and agility, and he combines that with some of the best techniques to utilize that. You know, judo and fucking gymnastics to dodge out of the way of stuff. And so that right there is cool. He's not fucking Superman or Wolverine. I mean, he does heal faster than a normal person, but that's because his immune system and all of that is boosted to the top levels of human ability. And he doesn't need as much sleep as normal people, which is a silly power, but he only needs a couple of hours of sleep a night to be rested. And he can actually handle fatigue. You know, he can run longer and faster than a normal person could. Couple of comic books, he's up for days at a time, running through mountains, crawling under the snow and shit, and he keeps going. He feels it, but he's able to push through it because he's got a better resistance to it. And then, of course, there is his shield, which is made of a experimental alloy of steel and vibranium, which is, of course, the metal that comes from T'Chaka's kingdom of Wakanda. So that's basically the reason it's able to defy the laws of physics. While it bounces off of pretty much anything and pretty much always returns back to Captain America. But of course, his training with it is how he's able to do that. I mean, the shield will always bounce, but you've got to be able to hit it just right so that it goes in the right direction. And Captain America knows how to do that every time, all the time. Interesting side note, nerds. The attempt to recreate the vibranium shield that Captain America uses actually led to the discovery of adamantium, which is the metal that coats Wolverine's bones. So that's a little free little tidbit for you. Shield's one of a kind, and everyone's trying to make another one, just like Captain America himself. One of a kind. Isn't that awesome? Oh, poor metallurgist Dr. Myron McClane. He can never do it. He can never do another one. But anyway, that's not, the shield is definitely, and it's a symbol, of course. It's got the red, the white, the red, and then the blue and white star. It's the symbol of Captain America. It's his tool. It's what makes him who he is. Which, of course, he can fight without the shield, and he does just fine without it. But it's part of the aesthetic of the character that I think works well. Plus, he runs around in chainmail, Like, it's a special bulletproof, or bullet resistant, I should say, not proof. Not that it's bulletproof, but a bullet resistant chainmail. God knows how heavy that shit is, but he just, fucking flipping over cars and diving around, doing just fine. It's crazy. It's crazy. He must, like, not be able to sneak up on people, though. I've seen him do it. I always wonder why, because, like, dude, that dude's wearing chainmail. He makes, like, a lot of noise. He's just crawling around. Anyway, so that's Captain America in a nutshell. The movie version hits him pretty close, pretty good. He seems to be a bit more religious in the movies than I remember him being in the comic books, but that's fine. He always was religious. He talks about God from time to time, but he never. I don't know. He always seemed to talk about America more than God. I don't know, and that seems to be reversed in the movies. I mean, Captain America, but he doesn't. He does the things that the comic book Captain America would do. And Chris Evans acts the character to a fucking T, where he's got a sense of humor, obviously, but it's never at anyone's expense, and it's never when the situation is dire. He's never telling jokes when shit's hitting the fan, when we got all focused together. Another thing I like about the comic book Captain America, he works for Marvel Comics. Yeah, I don't know if you know this either. There is a Marvel Comics in the Marvel Comics universe, and it is based in New York. And guess what comic book Steve Rogers, the alias of Captain America, writes? He writes Captain America. How fucking crazy is that? So he draws it. He's an artist. He draws Captain America for Marvel Comics. In Marvel Comics Captain America. How fucking crazy is that? That shit's awesome. I don't know, it's just a silly little neat thing. And that's part of his super soldier treatment. His hand-eye coordination is the zenith of human capability. So he's able to draw really well. He's got a great memory. Supposedly his cells recreate the super soldier serum. Like the 80s was all about, drugs. Say no to drugs, and drugs are bad. And everyone always make that crap. Well, fucking Captain America took drugs and he became a superhero, so let's just try that. Yeah, try it with heroin, buddy. See how much of a superhero you are then. You're more likely to become a supervillain. I am Heroin Man. I'll steal anything and turn it into heroin. Yeah, Heroin Man's a dick. Fuck that guy. Don't let him into your house. Don't do it. So they took the serum out of his blood. It had actually this is kind of a silly. So there's a series of comics called Streets of Poison, where Captain America's in this warehouse full of ice, which is like this new drug that's supposed to be even more addictive than crack. And it blows up. Whole fucking warehouse blows up. So Captain America gets a whole dose of ice, like in his veins, he breathes it in and it goes into it. But apparently, somehow it bonds with the super soldier serum in his blood. So he's like perma-high, right? They actually have to, I don't know the science of it. They just make it up, basically. But essentially, they take his blood out. They mix it around in a centrifuge. They separate out the super soldier serum, and then they put his blood back. And so he's just normal Captain America for a while. He's not, he doesn't have the extra boost. He's basically just instead of being a tiny guy, he's still big Steve Rogers, but he doesn't have the extra edge that he's not pushed that is to the zenith of human capability. So he's just a regular Captain America who still has gigantic muscles and still has all that combat training and still has the shield. So he's not really exactly unthreatening. You know, it's not like he's out there with his dick hanging in the wind. But eventually it's, you know, comic book writers love to change things and they love to unchange things because, you know, something that works now 10 years later some other comic book writer doesn't like, so he wants to switch it back. So it's eventually established that Steve Rogers' blood cells, blood cells actually reproduce the super soldier serum, so he's never without it for very long. If it gets separated from him, then he can get it back eventually. Which, again, like supposedly they've tried to recreate it a dozen times from his blood and have been unsuccessful. Seems to me like, I don't know. If his blood reproduces the serum, then strap that motherfucker to a chair and just drain his blood for a while. Eventually you'll be able to separate it, right? So he has blended boxing, judo, karate, jujitsu, kickboxing, and gymnastics into his own unique fighting style. And is a master of multiple martial arts. Yeah. That's Captain America. Also, he's been through a bunch of battles in war, so he's actually he's a really good field commander. Like, he's good at coordinating groups of people in order to, get at a particular objective. I don't know. He's just a cool fucking character. He is. Plus, he's blonde, blue-eyed, square-jawed. I don't know. I like him. He's a good guy. He's respectful of women, and he's never been... No racist bone in his body. His best friend is a flying black man. He's a good guy. I really dig him. Supposedly, some motherfucker decided it'd be hilarious to turn Captain America into a Hydra agent a while back. And I do not appreciate that shit at all. I haven't read any of that. I'm hesitant. I've read a little bit of it because it was part of Civil War II, which I did read all of, and that was really cool. But Captain America doesn't feature too heavily in that one. He's kind of a tertiary character off to the side. It's more the Captain... Well, to be fair, there's Sam Wilson, Captain America, who at one point Captain America actually gives Sam Wilson his shield and says, "You be Captain America." But then there's also, at the very same time, there's a Steve Rogers Captain America. So there's two Captain Americas running around, which is complicated. Which is something they did back in the 80s too. They had Captain America gives up being Captain America because the government wants to press him back into service, and again, he can't ally himself with any particular administration or anything and still be a symbol for America. So he turns in his shield, he turns in his uniform, and this other guy, the super patriot, real douchebag, he becomes Captain America for a while. Doesn't really work out for him because, he's not Steve Rogers. He got into it for the wrong reasons. He just wanted to be famous. He wanted to be big man, the top dog, and that's Captain America. You got the shield, you got the outfit, but you also got the responsibility. It's kind of like when Dr. Octopus took over Spider-Man's brain. Originally, he was gonna defame Spider-Man, but then he decided, to be a better Spider-Man than Peter Parker. He became a good guy because he saw the good. Or, in Buffy, when Faith and Buffy switch bodies, and Faith becomes becomes a hero because she's been in Buffy's shoes for a while. Because it's wrong. Yeah, that's good stuff. Anyway, that's enough nerdity for today, I think. Oh, I got it all. Yeah, I've been making a role-playing character past couple of days, so nerdity's been flowing through me very strong. I won't talk about role-playing games again for very long, except to say that I remade Snowy Locks, my favorite character. I made him again for this game, just because, fuck, man, I want more Snowy Locks. I want more. I love him, and hopefully I'll get to play him a couple of times before this all breaks down. RPGs, man. Everything else is more important. And I don't say that sarcastically at all. There's, priorities. There's, kids and work and family up here, and, you've got basic physical needs like food and water and booze, and then right down here, you've got board games, and then just below that. Actually, probably board games are somewhere in the food water region, and then down here at the bottom is where role-playing games are in the form of priorities. It's a sad world that we live in, but you gotta take the bitter with the sweet. So anyway, that's a bunch of rambling, and then also a bunch of Captain America. So I hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you guys have any suggestions, anything you want to hear me talk about, anything you want to hear me sing, anything you're curious of my take on is, and of course, anytime you want to hit me back, respond to anything that I said, hit me in the comments or my Facebook page, facebook.com/Matthew Amundsen, and also Maximus3116 @gmail.com. So have a good time, guys. I love you, and I will talk to you soon.